I would like to call the meeting to order for Monday, January 27th. In accordance with Section 28 of the Police Services Act and our own procedural bylaw, the board is required to elect a chair and vice chair at its first meeting each year. I would now like to open the floor to nominations for the position of chair.
I'd like to nominate Diane Deans for chair.
There being no further nominations, I would like to call for a motion to close the nominations for the position of chair. Seeing only one nominee, Member Deans has been declared the chair of the Ottawa Police Services Board. Given that Chair Deans continues to be on a medical leave of absence and we have not yet elected a vice chair, I will proceed to hold the subsequent election of vice chair. I am now opening the floor to nominations for the position of vice chair.
Thank you. I would like to nominate Sandy Smallwood to be the vice chair for the board for 2020.
Do I have a seconder? Member Smallwood, you have been selected as vice chair. Given Chair Dean's absence, I will now turn the meeting over to you as acting chair.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to serve as acting chair, and we're hoping that Councillor Deans will be returning soon and in good health. This is the board's first meeting of 2020, and certainly looking at the agenda, it's going to be a busy year, and we're certainly off to a busy start. With that in mind, I would like to move a motion to ensure coverage of chair and vice chair duties while Diane is absent and in the event that I am away. The motion is that the Ottawa Police Services Board approve that when the vice chair is absent, board member Suzanne Valiquet, as the next most senior member of the board, shall assume the responsibilities of the vice chair. Is that carried? Carried? Carried, thank you. Going on to the main agenda, are there any declarations of interest? Yeah, okay. Yes, actually, I'll start off with the page before with the confirmation of the agenda. That the Ottawa Police Services Board confirm the agenda of the 27th of January 2020. Okay, thank you. Now the confirmation of minutes. Minutes number 16 of the 16th of December, that the Ottawa Police Services Board confirm minutes number 16 of the 16th of December 2019. Is that confirmed? Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none. Inquiries. Member Nerman, I think you have an inquiry.
Yes. Thank you, Chair Smallwood. Chief, I would like to have a detailed policy provisions in regard to the internal promotions from the rank of constable to sergeant and upwards at the OPS, and I have 4 issues with that. Number 1 is, excuse me, when members both sworn and or civilian are promoted and or transferred to specialized sections, what, if any, previous experience in those areas do they need to have? For example, if a constable on a road is promoted and starts working in a more specialized section such as high-tech crime or a major crime, do they require previous experience in that area or specific skills? Second, does OPS has a program in place to mandatory rotation to different departments to give these employees enough exposure to be ready for the next level and take responsibilities, and if not, what steps are being initiated in that direction to boost the morale and motivate the employees? Third, Does OPS has career development officer to counsel both SWAN and civilian employees and guide them with the role and responsibilities before taking greater responsibilities in the force? And finally, during the promotion process, is OPS giving regards to have adequate representation of females, members from LGBTQ, visible minorities, and what steps are being initiated to fill the gaps in different levels at OPS?
Thank you, Member. Chair, through you, would you like us to go through the response, or?
Well, it's up to you. Do you want to reply to them now, or would you like
I
time?
can at a high level. I'll invite some comment from the CAO as well, but I suggest there are 4 very important questions that require probably a more substantive answer. Happy to do as much as we can today or under your direction.
No, I'm fine at a later date. I'm fine with that.
Okay. Well, then, if we could just respond at a later date, but at a high level, all 4 areas are critically important to not just advancing the core mandate of the police service, but to advance the direction that the board has set for community policing, diversity, and modernizing the police service. So we will come back to you with details, and I'm quite confident you will find the responses not just interesting, but satisfying, and I hope invigorating for the board to keep pushing us.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. I had an inquiry, and it goes to the presentation we had in December. If you recall, Aaron Lee of the Ottawa Coalition to End Violence Against Women and Sonny Mariner of the Violence Against Women Advocate Case Review gave a presentation to the board. The focus of their presentation was on awareness, transparency, and expert guidance with respect to violence against women. They had specific requests pertaining to statistics. Namely, they wanted the board to request and receive stats from the service on the number of violence against women reports and how many resulted in charges. Chief, my questions to you are, is there any reason why the board and the public cannot begin to receive these stats from the service? I understand Halton and Hamilton already do that, so I'm wondering if we could be receiving those, and if so, how soon we could start receiving them. And I also wondered if it would be possible to include those stakeholders in the presentation, so the violence against women and the case review, if they could be part of it, so we would get an external perspective of how it's working in terms of that.
Great. Thank you for the inquiry, Chair. Yes, the short answer is we can definitely beef up the statistics that we are reporting. There'll be some limitations depending on the nature of the violent crime and to what extent we can provide deeper insights into that. We will definitely work with the stakeholders in the community around violence against women. In fact, we have a large 3-hour meeting scheduled for March to sit down with a large group of stakeholders in that area, and we will delve into the issue of what stats they're looking for, what insights they're hoping to gain, and how they can support us in putting that information together for the board.
So I guess from that answer, then, we would expect it this year.
Oh, definitely this year.
Yes.
I
Okay.
can't give you which month. We may need a bit of time to pull that together,
And I'll
and even
hold
then
it
it'll
to
be a
you.
work in progress.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, sir.
The first item on the agenda is the Chief's verbal report, which we'll hold. The next item is the accelerated sworn officer hiring plan, which I believe we have a presentation, so we'll hold that for presentation and questions. And then we have Chief's report. The next one is the appointment of special constables, the Ottawa Police Service Chief's report, that the Ottawa Police Services Board approved the appointments of Ottawa Police Service employees Thomas Ash, Kyla Basilion, Melissa Cable, Robert McNally, as special constables pursuant to Section 53 of the Police Services Act, in accordance with the terms and conditions set forth in the attached approval of appointment form. Is this carried?
Yeah.
Thank you. Number 4 on the agenda is the appointment of Special Constable, Carleton University. Chief's report. That the Ottawa Police Services Board approved the appointment of the Carleton University employee, Alison Finn, as Special Constable pursuant to Section 53 of the Police Services Act, in accordance with the terms and conditions set forth in the attached approval of appointment form. Is this carried?
Carried, yeah.
Thank you. Number 5 is reappointment of Special Constables, Carleton University, that the Ottawa Police Services Board approve the reappointments of Carleton University employees Kyle Gallinger, Alyssa Poole, and Richard Samarin as special constables pursuant to Section 53 of the Police Services Act in accordance with terms and conditions set forth in the attached approval of appointment form. Is this carried?
Carried.
Thank you. Number 6 is the Ontario Association of Police Service Boards 2020 membership renewal, that the Ottawa Police Services Board approve the payment of $6,465.95, including HST, to the Ontario Association of Police Service Boards for its 2020 membership fee.
Carried.
This is carried. Thank you. The number 7, the Canadian Association of Police Governance 2020 membership renewal, that the Ottawa Police Services Board approve the payment of $6,094 to the Canadian Association of Police Governance for its 2020 membership fees. Is carried?
Carried, yeah.
Thank you. Number 8 is the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Action Plan. We'll hold this for a presentation. Number 9 is the 2019-2020 Strategic Direction for the Ottawa Police Service Semi-Annual Report, that the Ottawa Police Services Board receive this report for information. Is this received?
Yeah.
Thank you. Number 10 is collection of identifying information, duties, and prohibitions policy annual report. That the Ottawa Police Services Board receive this report for information. Received?
Received. Yeah.
Thank you. Number 11, secondary activities 2019 annual report. That the Ottawa Police Services Board receive this report for information. Is this received?
Received. Yeah.
Thank you. Number 12, Public Rewards 2019 Annual Report, that the Ottawa Police Services Board receive this report for information. Is this received?
Received.
Thank you. Number 13, the Ottawa Police Service Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act Status Report, that the Ottawa Police Services Board receive this report for information. Is this received?
Yeah.
Thank you. Number 14, Report on SIU Investigation, July 21st, 2018. That the Ottawa Police Services Board receive this report for information. Is this
Received.
Thank you. Number 15, Report on SIU Investigation, December 30th, 2018. That the Ottawa Police Services Board receive this report for information. Is this
Received.
received? Thank you. Number 16, the Report on SIU Investigation, December 31st, 2018. That the Ottawa Police Services Board receive this report for information. Is this
Received.
received? Thank you. Number 17, the Board Activity Training and Performance 2019 Annual Report. Number 1, that the Ottawa Police Services Board receive this report for information. And number 2, which I'm adding to it, that direct the Executive Director to forward it to City Council for information. Is that received?
Received.
Thank you. Number 18, Board Calendar of Monitoring Requirements 2020. That the Ottawa Police Services Board receive this report for information.
Received.
Received. Thank you. Number 19, Schedule of Conferences and CAPG Webinars in 2020, that the Ottawa Police Services Board receive this report for information.
Received.
Received. Thank you. Number 20, Outstanding Board Inquiries and Motions, January 2020, that the Ottawa Police Services Board receive this report for information. Is this received?
Received.
Thank you. Number 21, Letters of Commendation, that the Ottawa Police Services Board receive this report for information. Is this
Received.
received? Thank you. So we'll go back to the first item that was held, which is the Chief's verbal report. Chief?
Merci beaucoup et bonne soirée. First, congratulations, Mr. Smallwood, on your reappointment as acting chair and vice chair. I know the challenges that you've encountered doing double duty as chair and vice chair. We're also aware of the extra effort that the entire board has made to provide effective oversight as we await for the full reformation of the board. The OPS executive and I appreciate your efforts individually and collectively. I'd also like to congratulate Councillor Diane Deans on her reappointment as board chair. We look forward to her return to full duties and will continue to hold her in our thoughts and send her our best wishes. In the interim, my executive command and I will continue to support you and the board to deliver on the board's strategic direction. As you've noted, we have a very busy agenda and a number of items to discuss, so I'll try to keep my report more concise than usual. But I do need to provide an overview of some important initiatives and announcements that we've made since the last board meeting in December. First, we've announced the addition of 3 neighborhood resource teams. These teams will start in the Byward Market in May and in Centertown and Bayshore in the fall. This is a doubling of the NRTs and significantly advances the community policing priorities in line with the board's strategic direction. It will also significantly improve police service delivery, community safety, and community well-being in the 3 newly assigned neighborhoods. Second, we have reintroduced the hate crime section by allocating 2 new full-time detectives to the section to triple the current capacity of the OPS to meaningfully address hate crime incidents in the nation's capital. The OPS was the first police agency in Canada to create a hate crimes unit, and it has always had officers who were trained and focused on hate crime investigations. But this decision adds new officers, better quality service, and more corporate resources. It also provides a greater opportunity for community coordination with our important stakeholders. This includes communities who are most victimized and traumatized by hate crimes, hate incidents, and violent extremism. I make this announcement on the day that we're also acknowledging Holocaust Remembrance Day. It wasn't that long ago in 2002 that I had the chance to visit the concentration camp in Dachau, just outside of Munich. And I was sharing with the command team that even in 2002, there was a palpable sense of evil still in that location. And today we're seeing a rise of hate crimes and violent extremism here, nationally and internationally. Last but not least, we're realigning and reinvigorating our operations to prevent, suppress, respond to, and investigate, ultimately to successfully prosecute firearms crime and related violent street crime in our community. I want to note these efforts have been underway over the course of 2019 before I arrived. And this was the first year in several that we saw an actual decrease in firearms-related crimes, the first decrease since 2013. We also saw an increase in proactive investigations by our frontline officers, officers in uniform, traffic services, and of course our specialized investigative squads. We increased the number of crime guns that our officers took off the city streets. The violent and deadly start to 2020 is a sobering and tragic reminder of how much more the OPS and all areas of civil society have to do to address this critically important public safety issue. Despite the deadly gunplay in the first week of the new year, courageous work keeps happening by our officers, who have to date seized 18 crime guns in Ottawa. That's since the start of this year. These seizures took place while our officers were successfully investigating and arresting some of the city's most violent high-risk offenders. Yes, it has been a busy few weeks for us since the last board meeting, but I can tell you this leadership team is focused and committed to sound decision-making that improves policing in this community, builds morale, and shows an increased social and fiscal return on the investment. Since the first meeting of 2020, since this is the first meeting of 2020, I wanted to take a moment to talk about some of the year-end statistics and trends from 2019. First of all, police services nationwide have been struggling to address an increase in criminality and social disorder within their respective communities. In Ottawa, there were over 345,000 calls that were entered into our dispatch system last year, with 70% requiring a police officer to attend. The top 5 service requests from our community were collisions, disturbances, disputes, unwanted persons, and suspicious incidents. As part of our commitment to enhance the safety of our communities, in 2019, our officers engaged in over 90,000 proactive contacts with the community. These were to address crimes in progress or community safety concerns. They were self-initiated acts by our officers without a call from the community. Additionally, the Ottawa Police Service worked on nearly 43,000 criminal offenses and investigations last year, which is an increase of over 10%. Despite this increase, we solved 35% of those incidents, whether by charges laid, diversion techniques, or referrals to not-for-profit agencies. The volume of reported violent incidents grew by 11% in 2019, driven mostly by an increase in uttering threats, common assaults, and robberies. Conversely, the number of homicides declined slightly from 15 in 2018 to 13 cases. Declined to 15 in 2019, with 13 cases solved to date. And by the way, that solve rate is one of the best I've ever seen anywhere in Canada or North America. Kudos to our investigative units. I want to thank our major crime investigators for their work. I also recognize these cases require a great amount of cooperation from officers across the service and the support of witnesses from our communities that are impacted. Ottawa saw 73 shootings with 26 people injured last year and 5 killed due to gun violence. This showed a slight decline from the previous year and was the result of efforts by officers and our community partners. It also saw the recovery of over 70 crime guns over the course of the year. The volume of non-violent crime reports have also increased by 10%, with thefts under $5,000 driving this result. This is attributed to increases in shoplifting at our major retailers, which is on point with trends seen right across the province. Our alternative response unit has been very active in identifying these trends and investigating leads, which has turned into arrests and the breakup of some of these criminal gangs. This includes working with retailers to prevent the crimes in the first instance. And I want to give kudos to the alternative response unit, often seen as an area where we accommodate a lot of our officers, but their heart and soul is still intact, and they push hard to get public safety results, even though they can't be on the road. Finally, our public opinion research has clearly identified that community perception around the level of fear of crime is rising. Our members also witness these trends firsthand, and I've heard from them, and I know that we must do and will do better together. So going forward, in the past few months, I've been meeting with and listening to the people from across our community and within our own organization. I value their comments and their input. It is time to pivot from listening and learning about the concerns and the priorities of our members and our community partners, as well as academics and the board, into actual implementation of plans. In fact, we're presenting two of the most critically important action plans to the board on the agenda today. First, the accelerated hiring plan. We're seeking your approval. This plan is based on feedback from community stakeholders from across the city and from our OPS members from across the organization. It is a desire that we need to make this immediate critical investment in accelerating our hiring to improve the safety and morale of our members, while also improving the capacity of our members to better serve and protect the city. We expect that the board will ask hard-working questions to test the validity and the veracity of the plan, and we will do our very best to provide you the responses that accurately represent the needs of our members and the community. The second is the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Action Plan. This plan will become the foundation that will address issues relating to bias, discrimination, and racism in the OPS, and its service delivery for all communities. It will also advance a more ethical, healthy, and safe work environment for all of our OPS members. What I've spoken with you all about here tonight is the nuts and bolts of what we do at the OPS. But as you all know, it's the interactions between our members and the community that leaves the most lasting impressions. Our officers are out there, all of our members are out there every day, trying to help those in need. We get letters from residents all the time letting us know that our officers and our members are making a difference. Letters like the one that I would like to share with you now. I called the Ottawa Police Service for assistance for a suspected assault. The victim was not entirely cooperative and was very scared. Constable Andrew Chronopoulos and Philippe Charbonneau handled the situation with professionalism and compassion. They created a positive interaction with the victim, and she has not had many positive interactions with police before. They helped to establish trust so that in the future she may feel more safe to reach out. I want to congratulate those two officers for their compassion, professionalism, and sensitivity. They made a real difference in this survivor's life. Again, I point the members of the public and the board to the letters in the agenda that speak to many other acts of service and self-sacrifice by our members. Most recently, I was out with our neighborhood team in one of our neighborhoods, and they shared with me a couple of brief stories. One of them was an officer who had been working with a lady who has several children, some of them adopted. The circumstances of her children meant that she was living literally dollar to dollar, week to week. She did not have enough money for flu and fever medicine for one of her children. It's a simple thing, but the officer went to the local pharmacy, paid $10 for a bit of Tylenol, and brought that back to the lady. In turn, that goodwill generated a lot of insights into that community that we would not have had before. I asked the officer a straight question: did you buy the flu medicine to get the intelligence? No. We bought it because it was the right thing to do for a mother who was struggling in that moment. And because of that, we generated the confidence in the community to move it into a public safety standpoint. While I was on patrol with one of our frontline officers, he recognized a mother of one of the young women in the community who was being trafficked. She was also a victim of mental health and drug addictions. Twice, this officer himself had been involved in life-saving efforts to resuscitate this daughter. Otherwise, she would have passed away. Unfortunately, this young lady did pass away. And the mother was literally on the side of the road crying in her car. He recognized the mother. He pulled over to the side. He said, "Chief, we have to go talk to this lady." Gave me the circumstances. He walked over to the lady and spent 10 minutes with her talking about the life of her daughter, bringing a human face to this tragic incident. I will tell you, this happens every day across the city by our officers. It just so happened that I was present for these two instances. Many times we don't get the credit for what we do, and many times I can't report accurately in a first-hand way the quality of the service provided. I know it's not perfect, and there are other times we may let down our profession and this organization, but the vast majority of our people do an amazing job, a heroic job, an unheralded job every single day. And I want to extend that to the community represented here, because again, I see firsthand when I'm on the road, not-for-profit workers, city employees doing amazing and unheralded acts of service right across the city. It is a great community, a great city. You have a great police service. There's more that we can do better together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. And I think the board certainly is supportive of your efforts and the direction that we're heading in. And I think, as you've said, this is a partnership. This isn't something that either the police are going to do all by themselves. It's going to be done in partnership with the community and community groups. So I really appreciate, and certainly your words resonate with us.
Thank you, Chair.
On that note, we'll go to the next item on the agenda. Oh, yes, sorry, that on the Chief's verbal report, that the Ottawa Police Services Board received this report for information. Received? Oh, certainly. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Chief, for the great initiative, and especially the hate crime which you have brought in online reporting. A few months ago, I raised this issue that the OPS online reporting is not gender neutral. Has some progress made in that direction?
I'm going to have to turn to one of my colleagues who might best answer that. Jaswal seems to be leaning into the microphone.
Thank you, Chief. Member Nirman, through the chair. This is an issue we're very conscious of. We know that there are many communities that would prefer not to identify themselves, or individuals who would prefer not to identify themselves as male or female, and they want to do so in a non-binary fashion. And so we've been looking at a variety of options. Currently, our online reporting system allows you to identify yourself as male, female, or unknown, which clearly is not a very good solution. The challenge we have is the interface of our online system with those systems that we use in policing, like the CPIC system or our Versaterm system. We need some mechanism that will help bridge the input to convert it into something that those systems will understand and be able to interpret, and actually produce reports at the sort of the tail end through the court process. So that's an ongoing discussion that we're having. I do not have a definitive answer for the board today on whether we can accomplish that, but it's something we are looking at diligently, because we know many communities and many individuals have asked us to improve that system.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions of the Chief?
Yep.
Member Meehan?
Thank you. I just have to find it here. There were some stats there, Chief, that I just wanted to double check. You said there were 18 crime guns seized during arrests. You weren't specifically looking for guns, but the guns turned up while you were making arrests, or?
I'll get some help from Deputy Jaswal on this one. There were search warrants executed without compromising the investigations themselves. In some cases, we were aware of the potential location of weapons. The majority of these are frontline officers, though, who are using their own street smarts and intelligence generated through community contacts, through our intelligence bureau, putting themselves in the right place at the right time in order to make street-level investigations that are more frequently turning up crime guns. It also bears witness to briefings I've had from our investigative team that some of our high-risk offenders are using vehicles to convey the firearms, both from an importation smuggling standpoint as well as in day-to-day business, crime business. And again, our officers are conducting proactive vehicle stops, and through the course of the investigations are coming up with guns, crime guns within the vehicles themselves. So this is across the board, officers being aware of street violence, firearm-related violence, and are making proactive attempts to intervene in that, as well as investigations that are driven by intelligence, signed off by warrants in our judiciary, and then going through the right doors and coming up with crime guns, drugs, and other crime-related activities. But I'll just have the deputy put a more fine point on that.
Thanks, Chief. I don't know if I can really add a lot more other than those 18 gun seizures are, as the Chief said, from a variety of police activity, from warrants to traffic stops to just great police work and street work. And so those are the types of systems that we're trying to build more robustly within the service right now through some of the activities and changes the Chief is implementing now. So we'll continue to see those good results.
Proactive vehicle stops, is there any problem with, like, are we looking at any potential problems with doing that? Do we have to have reasons to stop vehicles? I'm just...
Short answer is yes. And if you're alluding to the issues that we've seen in policing across this country around a breach of our charter rights, a breach of ethical or service policy, a breach of any law, absolutely. None of that will be condoned under my watch. None of it has been condoned. These are efforts of officers with a lawful purpose to protect the public and conduct investigations. Ultimately, the veracity of those investigations will be tested in the courts, those of which the charges were laid, and then the cases proceed to courts.
And is shoplifting on the rise? I'm anecdotally from retailers in my ward, I understand it is. Do the stats bear that out?
We have seen an increase in shoplifting, but again, I'm going to get some insights from Deputy Jaswal. In fact, we hosted an event here with our retailers and investigators from across the province that shed a lot of insights into this trend.
Thanks. So absolutely, we are seeing what we would say is organized retail theft. We've seen a dramatic increase in that activity, as well as the violence associated to it. In fact, Inspector Debbie Miller is here. She led the effort around the retail theft conference that we hosted, so bringing together a variety of retailers and other stakeholders to more fully examine that issue and how we can put in some prevention and intervention strategies to address that. But it is something we have noticed, and it's significant, growing across not only the province of Ontario, but across Canada.
And you spoke about the alternative service, or an alternative, what was it, the term that you used, Chief?
So many of these charges increasingly are going by the way of referral or diversion. Pre and post-charge diversion. In fact, the deputies had conversations with our lead Crown here to expand our diversion program. That'll be part of what we do with our neighborhood teams and give them more abilities to move these more minor offenses out of the justice system, and then referrals into our not-for-profit sector where a reason for the police being called might be better resolved with a more sustainable outcome and a less costly one by our community partners. Again, this is both an investigative effort on the charge end of things, but more importantly, in diversion and prevention before we even get into the justice sphere.
But if they're organized, when you say organized, are there young people in the organized rings that they're targeting?
Thank you. To be clear, the diversion and referral would not be around organized crime rings. Be more
Just
the
petty
one-off.
theft.
I can't speak to the makeup of these organized crime rings. I don't know, Deputy, if you have any further insights into.
But mostly it'd be petty, the person, a petty shoplifting, you divert them. Okay. Okay, I think that answers my question, but thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Meehan. If there are no other questions, we'll move on to we have accelerated sworn officer hiring plan, and we have a presentation for that. I'll turn it over to you, Chief.
Thank you, Chair, Board. I'm going to request CAO Letourneau will walk you through a deck. I'm just sort of going to hit off the highlights. If we could just prime the deck. Just as that's coming up, certainly in my comments here today and in other comments I've made from my start as tenure as Chief back in October, almost 3 months to the day. We have seen and heard continuously from community and service members that our resources are stretched and that with the right investments we can make a bigger impact on public service, public safety, and I would dare say public trust, public confidence in the police. We have put together a proposal for board approval that would allow us to, with no extra cost to taxpayers, no increase in the budget envelope that was approved, accelerate our hiring in 2020, and through the recruiting, training, coach officer process and probationary officer process, have an additional 70 officers beyond the additional 30 that were to be hired this year be fully deployable by year end and certainly before the end of 2021. The immediate impact in terms of our capacity for frontline officers in neighborhood policing, frontline uniform policing, guns and gangs, violence against women, and other frontline areas would be significant. The ability for us to work more concretely and comprehensively with our community partners would be significant. The ability for our officers to feel safe and be safe, to have a sense of a morale boost, which is much needed, quite frankly. A sense of confidence and hope should not be lost on this board, because it is not lost on our senior leadership team or our frontline members. We would accelerate an additional 70 sworn officers forecasted that would have been hired over the course of 2021 through 2023. These additional 70 accelerated resources would be invested in frontline policing. There would be a cost up front, which would be borne out by funding that would be reprioritized primarily through the modernization roadmap, capital, and general reserve balances. Again, I'm going to leave that to Jeff Letourneau to walk you through the details. There'd be no impact on the police tax rates from 2020 to 2023. And with that, I'll turn over to Jeff for the details.
Thank you, Chief. So next slide. So with board approval, the OPS would immediately begin working to add 70 new police officers to the current complement in 2020, in addition to the 30 growth officers approved in the 2020 budget. In total, 100 new growth officers will be added to the complement in 2020. The plan accelerates the forecasted growth in police hiring for 2021 and 2022, along with a portion of hiring forecasted for 2023. As the Chief mentioned, the new officers will all be hired in 2020 and fully deployed in 2021. The plan will put more officers on the road earlier so they can gain experience to more quickly make meaningful contributions to public safety. The increase in staffing will allow for the deployment of new resources in areas with high policing needs, including neighborhood policing, gun and gang violence suppression, violence against women, and frontline policing. The plan will cost $14.7 million over 4 years and will be funded by reprioritizing existing funds within the OPS budget. Included in that $14.7 million cost is $500,000 of net one-time costs, along with $14.2 million in net total ongoing costs, which is mainly made up of compensation. The next slide breaks down the cost of the plan over the 4 years. The total ongoing costs of the incremental 70 growth positions is identified, and as you can see, it's mainly made up of compensation. These amounts are reduced by the costs included in future year forecasts. The net cost required to fund is $14.7 million over 4 years. Moving on to the funding. The plan is fully funded. This has been accomplished by reprioritizing existing funds within the OPS budget. $5.3 million from the general reserve and $9.4 million from reprioritized modernization roadmap capital. The plan does not impact the net operating requirement of the OPS in 2020 and will not impact the council-approved 2020 police tax levy increase of 3%. As well, during this term of council, the OPS will develop its annual budget to align with council-approved budget recommendations for the police service tax levy increase and assessment growth increases. In order to ensure affordability of the plan, the OPS reviewed all projects with a focus on delivering a better social and fiscal return on investment. This included a review of the modernization roadmap, reassessing all current projects, and recalibrating OPS priorities. In making these decisions, the OPS is ensuring that funds are invested in ways that advance our public safety priorities. Moving on to the modernization roadmap, as mentioned previously, the MR capital budget will be reduced by $9.4 million in order to fund the accelerated hiring plan, leaving $7.5 million available for investment. The OPS will continue with its commitment to modernization by making smarter investments and focusing on fewer priority projects that are core to improving member and public safety. The last slide presents the impact on the general reserve balances from this proposed plan. Right at the bottom of the slide is the most important row, and as you can see, the balances are healthy, and they never dip below $1 million. With that, that concludes my presentation, and we'd be happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Chief and Chief Administrative Officer. I'm sure we have lots of questions, so start with the Mayor. I see.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations on your hard-fought electoral victory. Appreciate that. Thank you, Chief and Jeff and your leadership team for bringing this forward. Thank you for working with my office, and thank you for including item 5, recommendation 5, which respects the city-approved budget recommendations. On the issue, I'd raised this once before, but maybe just in a public setting, the college in Aylmer only has so many spots. So how do you propose to get 100 people through as quickly as we can to get them out, the officers out on the street?
Absolutely. I'll let Jeff do a deeper dive into it. These are circumstances that I've faced before. I had the pleasure of a similar opportunity in 2005, 2006 in Toronto. And I will say, when an organization has a chance to accelerate hiring for whatever reason, we'll find a way to make it happen. The energy and logistics of such an announcement will prove successful. We also have great working relationships with the Ontario Police College, but the team has put its mind to this, and I'll let Jeff get into the details now.
Thank you, Chief. Acting Superintendent Patterson and his team in outreach and recruiting have successfully secured enough spaces at the OPC in order for us to deliver on this plan.
That's good work, thank you. On the reductions to the capital budget, is there anything that we should be concerned about that is not going to be funded as a result of reallocating these dollars into the operating budget on a short-term basis?
I don't think there is not anything that you should be concerned about as a board. The modernization roadmap is the project that we've reviewed the most and is contributing the significant lion's share of the funding to fund this accelerated hiring plan. The teams have done a deep dive over the last couple of years. It's been under significant review over the last 6 months. The plan that we have moving forward ensures that the foundation from an IT perspective is in good shape. We're working very closely with our partners at the city and Valerie Turner and her team to ensure that we have support and we can leverage functionality that's available through the city. So by doing things ourselves and by leveraging the city, we're able to make up the difference.
Thank you. I would like to offer my comments and to thank the Chief for bringing this forward. This is I think in my memory, at least, the last 25 years, the single largest hiring of police officers in 1 year, which I think will have a very positive impact on coverage and presence in different neighborhoods, particularly those neighborhoods that have some challenges. So I'm very happy to support this. I also thank you for continuing to work with our Treasury Department, because obviously we want to continue to eliminate some of the back office duplication. You know, the Chief, I think, or Jeff gave me a good example. We have a mail service, you know, a postal service that delivers to all our facilities, and you have one as well. Yet we could probably work together to have one postal service that drops off at police stations and community centers and libraries and so on. So I'd encourage you to continue to bring forward those kinds of practical, pragmatic savings that can be brought forward, because, you know, even with the 3% city allocation plus the 1.5% in assessment growth at 4.5%, there's always ways that we can save in the back office so we have a greater presence in the community with uniformed police officers. And I recognize too, I think, you know, the Chief was telling me that some of these dollars will go to 911 specialists, because there is we often don't think of them, the wear and tear on their own soul when they're taking some pretty traumatic calls, and there's a high turnover. So hopefully this will help stabilize that service as well. And thank you for the very thorough report, both of you. Merci.
Member Nerman, Member Valley, Member Nerman, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chief, and the entire team for bringing this plan forward. This is definitely, I'm getting a positive feedback but I have a few questions just for the clarification, if you can enlighten me with that. The modernization plan was put in place in part to make the service more efficient and to realize savings as a result. You are now proposing that the funds be accelerated hiring plan have to come from various such initiatives. Are any of the initiatives that are being canceled, postponed, or delayed impacting anticipated potential savings? If so, how are you planning to offset those potential savings?
So again, I want to clearly state the modernization roadmap has produced successes, and in those successes, I believe savings and improved capacity. Full compliments to Deputy Chief Steve Bell. One of the main areas that we've seen success is in our frontline mobility. It has provided our officers with the ability to have a device in their hands as well as a reoriented work environment within the vehicles. I've seen firsthand the ability of officers now to take a smart device into a hospital, for instance, and complete reports that would otherwise require them either to go back to the vehicle or go back to the station. And so they're able to clear these complex calls a lot more quickly and put information in the system that reduces risk. There are other areas, however, within the modernization roadmap that were proving less successful or did not demonstrate a clear return on investment. We are discontinuing or downgrading some of those areas, and that's producing the net savings, which is going to be reinvested in the accelerated, assuming we get approval, the accelerated hiring plan. The modernization roadmap is a significant investment, but not the only one. We've heard of other efforts by the CAO to modernize our back office, align it better with city resources. So there are many other modernization efforts that are taking place, some of which exist under the previous roadmap, and others which are carrying on nonetheless. But we believe that the reprioritization of these resources will have a much bigger return on investment, a much more positive impact on our frontline officers, the service as a whole, and the city as a whole.
And any of such initiatives are being canceled, postponed, or delayed with this injection of the 100, with this budget transfer? Are you planning to, any of the services will be affected, frontline, school, or something?
I'll let the CAO speak, but I'm not aware of any of our, in fact, quite the opposite. We're investing in the frontline portions of the old modernization roadmap project and continue to move that forward. And the majority of the investments redirected will be going back to frontline services. The community will be better served as a result of this, but I'll let the CAO speak more specifically.
Yeah, so just to follow on with what the chief was saying, the initiatives that we're having success, especially the Frontline Mobility Project, are continuing and will continue to completion. The other projects that were deemed being successful will continue. The investments will continue. There are some projects are being held or not moved forward with. We're looking at other ways to solve those problems and address those issues. The main option that we're looking at and working quite closely with the city to leverage functionality that's available through the city, so we will be able to deliver on those efficiencies without having to make the same investment.
And which are those projects?
The member information system project is a great example. That's basically our HR system. So we're currently working on implementing a new recruiting system in line with the city. And if approved, that's through Wave 1 of their SAP modernization project. If approved through Wave 2, we would move forward to participate in replacing our full HR back office system, which would have significant advantages. We're also working more closely with the city IT teams to take advantage of functionality that's currently available to our city partners, but isn't available to the OPS resources today. And that will come with minimal investment.
I have a follow-up question. Are we shoring up this operational budget by transferring funds from our capital budget?
I wouldn't say we're shoring it up. I'd say that the plan is funded with one-time money. The $14.7 million is one-time funding.
Thank you.
Member Valiquette.
I applaud you on this project. It's wonderful. I'm sure it's exactly what our community needs. So kudos on that. My questions are pretty much on the heel of what the mayor was mentioning, that this is likely the single largest hiring effort ever. And also, if we are to be sensitive to the communities that these new officers are going to be working in, my question is the following. What steps are you taking to make sure that the background investigators are going to be culturally competent and that they understand the importance of a diverse workforce? That's the first one. The second one is about something we mentioned in our December meeting, and that was to do with the coach program. Who will be training the new recruits? Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. You're going to get a presentation right after this on the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Action Plan. First of all, I think you will see one of our top 10 priorities for this year relates very specifically to what you've just asked. Secondly, we're going to be presenting to the board at the February board meeting an overall picture of our recruiting, hiring, training, coach officer program. It will relate to the EDI plan, but it was already a standing item to provide the board with insight, and I anticipate confidence in the significant changes that have been undertaken, again, before I arrived and since my arrival. I'll just ask quickly the CAO and perhaps Acting Superintendent Patterson to give you a little taste of some of what we've been doing.
Thank you, Chief. What I can say, so the Chief's already touched on the fact that making changes to our recruiting process along with the background check process is a key focus out of the EDI action plan. There have been significant changes made already to date to our recruiting process. You will see that presentation in February. It is resulting in a significant increase in the diversity of the applicant pool. And this builds on the successes that the recruiting team had in 2019. If you recall, 66 new recruits were hired in 2019, over 40% women and 30% racialized. Very strong numbers, the best numbers that we've seen at OPS in quite some time, and the recruiting team is building on that moving forward. The coach officer program, we had a presentation a few months ago. There's an audit that has been performed for that program. We're just going through the results of that audit, and those changes and those recommendations coming out of that audit will be implemented as part of this process. The officers that we're hiring here as part of this plan won't be with their coaches until the August timeframe. So we have a plan in place to ensure that we have appropriate, qualified, experienced, culturally competent coach officers for that time period. Anything to add?
Yeah, thanks. If I can just add to that, Member Valaket, with our new process this year, so far since January 1st, we have 363 applicants in our new pool. That's not including the 2019 people that we've had apply to us. 75 of those applicants are women, which is 20%, and 111 are racialized, which is a large number compared to what we had. So the amount of applicants we've actually had this year in 1 month are equivalent to what we had for 6 months last year. And we've had our first 4 Indigenous applicants as well as other people identifying through LGBTQ community as well.
Yes.
So now that you're making all these great changes, what about people who applied who didn't make it years back or the year before? Is there any way that they could reapply for a position?
The answer to that is yes, they can. We have a very robust process, a new process. We also have a very strong outreach and recruitment team that does a lot of mentoring. And we encourage people that have applied in the past to look and see where they may have failed in relation to the competitive process and encourage them to attend to our information sessions, follow us on social media, understand about what is required in the new process and what they can work on to better themselves. And we have quite a few success stories that we can talk offline, Member Valquette, about the people who have been through this process, has not been successful in the past, and now have been successful and been hired.
Thank you. So I had a couple of questions that more or less have been covered, but I just want to sort of state them a different way. With respect to we're taking $9 million, I think, from the modernization roadmap. That's a large amount of money, and I'm hearing generalities as to where it's coming from. I'm just wondering, can you give like a tangible example of how the front line or the public may see a change as a result of that reduction or that reallocation of funds out of there? Is there some tangible way we can see this was going to happen and it's not going to happen now?
While Jeff is turning his papers there, short answer is no. The most successful and the area that we will continue to invest in was our frontline mobility project, which we've talked about. If the public was going to feel it, they will have felt it in that area, and I believe that they would have seen a different turnout of vehicle, a different capability of officers using mobile devices, more ability to communicate with frontline officers in near real time, and better information sharing between officers and the service to produce a better service. The majority of the modernization would not have been felt and experienced directly by the public themselves. I'll let Jeff add into that.
Yeah, so just to build on what the chief said, I don't think the public will see any impact from this. The majority of the reductions are coming from the work the work being shifted from consultants to internal resources, along with leveraging what's available through the city and already in place or planned to be in place, and getting a better value for money in terms of partnering with the city, which is a $3.5 billion enterprise compared to OPS.
Okay, and with respect to the modernization portion of it, I know that as a board we were told before that we were in danger of falling behind the rest of the country, and this was a really important initiative to make sure that we were up there with the other services and where policing was going. You're confident that that will continue to be the case, that we're not going to find ourselves as being still riding horses when everyone else is riding bicycles?
Well, what I can say is most police services are in a similar boat. We're continuing to invest in the areas that we think we need to invest in ensuring that we're equipping our frontline members, both the sworn members as well as the civilian members. Frontline mobility project is continuing. Equipping all of our members with computer software that's up to date and addresses those needs, and collaboration software is going to continue, as well as continuing to invest in our information management system so that our crime analysts and our investigators can have up to date and accurate information in order to be able to make decisions. So those are the areas that are going to be continued on. From a back office perspective, that's where we're going to be leveraging and working more closely with the city to ensure that our HR and our financial systems are up to speed and invested in.
Thank you.
Chair, at the risk of belaboring a point, where the public will see a difference is 100 officers that are fully deployed in 2021 and working in frontline positions, having the biggest impact on public safety and public confidence in their police service. It is a very good investment that we're asking you to approve and make.
Well, it's a nice segue into my final thing, which is, and I certainly support this. I think it's a great initiative, and we wanted change when we hired you, and clearly you and your team are bringing about change. I think one of the concerns might be just given, as Member Valquette is saying, that the magnitude, and the mayor said the magnitude of this hire this year. I heard very clearly, but I want you to just reinforce the fact that we are in no way lowering our standards with our hires. We're changing the way we're going about it. But this isn't in order to get all of these numbers. We're not somehow rather lowering the requirements to be a police officer serving the residents of Ottawa.
Well, let me state emphatically for the record, the standards are not being lowered. in many cases are going up. I would be very worried myself if I was applying in this day and age against the competitive pool that Superintendent Patterson and his team are putting together. In fact, the deputies and the CAO and I were presented with a list of 16 new applicants that had passed through all the various stages under this revamped system. And as I was listening to the description of these 16 human beings, I started to feel rather inadequate myself. In fact, on one occasion, I thought I should just vacate the chair I'm sitting in right now and just let this new recruit sit right in there. I don't say that facetiously. From the background officers to the outreach recruit team to the leaders at our college, an incredible effort has gone in to put a new system in place that produces a higher quality set of applicants coming in and a higher set of quality hires to come in, including the diversity component across the board. Although we talk about women and we talk about racialized groups across the board, the members that we're hiring into this organization are first class. And more than any IT modernization effort, they will advance this organization for generations to come.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from the board members? No. Okay, thank you. I think you know, excuse me, you know where the board is on this. We're very supportive of this. So on this particular item, accelerated sworn officer hiring plan that the Ottawa Police Service Board approve. One, the acceleration of hiring the 70 sworn positions identified in the Ottawa Police Service's 2020, 2021, 2022, and a portion of 2023 staffing forecasts, requiring no additional funding to the approved 2020 operating budget envelope and using one-time sources outlined in the recommendations below. And two, the return of the budgeted authority within the following two capital projects to the Ottawa Police Service General Capital Reserve Fund, 909-553 2019 Modernization Roadmap for $5,582,000 and 909-884 2020 Modernization Roadmap for $3,865,000. And three, an increase in budgeted authority from the OPS General Capital Reserve within Capital Project 909-886 2020 growth costs in the amount of $3,185,700 to cover the one-time costs of the additional 70 positions. And four, the transfer of $3,306,600 from the OPS General Capital Reserve Fund into the 2020 operating budget to cover the additional ongoing costs related to the 70 sworn positions. And five, that the OPS amend its budget forecast tabled during the 2020 budget and table its 2021, 2022, and 2023 budgets to align with the City Council approved budget recommendations for the police tax levy and assessment growth. Is this carried? Carried. Thank you.
Chair, would you indulge me for a minute?
Of course.
So I will say tongue-in-cheek. Tongue-in-cheek. I think the board did a great job in hiring their new chief. But I will say no tongue-in-cheek, with all honesty. This will be one of the most significant things that we do in my tenure. And it was architected not by me. It was by the entire command team, our executive team and senior leadership team. But I want to point out in particular CAO Jeff Letourneau and his team. Anyone who believes that back office functions, civilian members of this organization, do not contribute directly to our frontline capabilities and our core mission, only needs to understand the depth and breadth of the effort that went into putting together this business case, managing the many risks associated to even presenting it to you, working with the mayor and his staff, and doing revisions up until the last minute to make sure that we had dotted every I and crossed every T. If the members of the Ottawa Police Service enjoy hiring and working with 100 new members, and if the community across the city feels that impact of 100 new members deployed, it is entirely because of the command team's effort and primarily because of the work of the CAO. The board made a fantastic choice in their new CAO.
Thank you very much. Moving right along to item number 8 on our agenda, which is the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Action Plan. We have a presentation for that now.
So as there's a shuffling of chairs, Deputy Chief Jaswal and his team will be coming up to present the EDI Action Plan. I'm also grateful for the presence here today of one of the co-chairs of our Community Equity Council, Sahada, and I will let them walk you through what I believe firmly is a concise but comprehensive and very compelling action plan for us to advance equity, diversity, and inclusion in the Ottawa Police Service.
Thanks, Chief. Mr. Chair, I'd like to introduce the delegation that's before you. Inspector Paul Burnett, who leads the EDI initiative right now, Manager Laurie Fenton, who's really the brains behind this operation and this plan. Sahada Alolo, who's the community co-chair of the Community Equity Council. We're very pleased to have her with us. And of course, Director David Snoddy, who you know. I'd also want to acknowledge Steve Bell as the Deputy Chief Police Co-Chair of the Community Equity Council for the work that they've done on this, and you'll hear about that shortly. I do want to thank the board for the opportunity this evening to present the Equity Diversity Action Plan for 2020. And today really is about action. It's about delivering tangible outcomes that'll help drive cultural change within the Ottawa Police Service and ultimately support more equitable and accountable policing for all residents of Ottawa. And we've heard repeatedly from our community and members since we launched the EDI program in November 2018 that they were tired of being surveyed, tired of being consulted for the purpose of generating reports that speak to current state, and that they wanted to now see positive change within the Ottawa Police Service. Having said that, in preparing the EDI action plan, I think we've done our due diligence in having reviewed and considered the vast inventory of recommendations that we've received from the community and our members over the last number of years. And with the help of the community and our members, we've prioritized these action items and the unactioned inventory of activities or recommendations that we've received. And I think for the board's comfort, it's interesting to note that the themes that emerge around those recommendations have in fact been quite consistent over time. And the priority that's associated with the items that we bring forward today are actually quite consistent between our community and members. And I'm confident in saying that because we've done extensive consultation. Most recently in December 2019 with the Human Rights Learning Forum, and the board will know that we had over 200 members that attended that forum, including many members of the board yourselves. And so we've worked very closely with the community, and we've worked very closely, I would say, as well with the Community Equity Council. And again, very pleased to have Ms. Alolo here with us today to provide some observations on the plan for the board. But before we do that, I just wanted to show a short video to the board, which will give you a reminder of how constructive and collaborative our day at the Human Rights Forum was in December 2019.
It's just videos.
Before I hand it over to Inspector Burnett and Manager Fenton. I'm just going to ask, they'll walk you through the actual plan and the areas that we've identified for 2020, but I just want to ask Ms. Ololo to provide a few comments.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me here today. It is truly an honor to be part of the Community Equity Council, and I say this because of the willingness and dedication of the OPS members in looking to work with the community members. Early December, just after the Human Rights Forum, we were, as a Community Equity Council, we were presented with an opportunity to support the OPS in the development of the EDI action plan. Actually, to be very precise, we were told that Chief Slowly wanted us to go fast and not slow. And so, and that he had tasked the Deputy Jaswell and the EDI team to come up with the action plan by the end of January in 2020. And so you have to remember this was a very busy time for community members and for OPS as well. But we saw this as a significant opportunity, and we immediately convened. The Community Equity Council has different, various committees that work to support the work that we do. And so we immediately convened several community meetings to look at the traffic stop data and the diversity audit, reviewing it to feed into the overall EDI action plan. And I have to tell you, community members were really pumped up, even though they were very busy. They tried to put aside some of the commitment to come together to actually feed into this action plan, because it was a great opportunity and we took it running. So we were able to organize despite the busy times, and all the community members met. And for me, as a community member, what was actually very fulfilling for me and inspiring was when all the different committees met and we were able to compile all the feedback that came to us. My favorite word in 2020 is synergy. There was synergy. Even though we met at different times, and when we came together to compile it, the recurring themes were just phenomenal. And it shows that as community, we are speaking the same language, so to speak. Basically, that language is we all want equity, diversity, and inclusion in our city. And so we handed the document to the EDI team. Synergy came again. When they took the feedback from the Community Equity Council and they compared it with the feedback they got from the Human Rights Forum and the citywide consultation and the online consultation they did, again, the recurring themes were just phenomenal. And so that goes to show that the document you're about to see, a lot of, let me put it, tears of joy went into developing that. And for me, as a community member, I'm very hopeful and inspired that with all of you and with the community members around, we'll be able to create the city that we all want to live in. And I conclude by saying that we are very, very lucky to live in this city that has community members and OPS members who are willing to put, some of the uncomfortable topics aside, but come together to make our city beautiful and safe for everyone. And so community members are out there just waiting to roll up their sleeves to work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Sahada. Well, as you can see, building an EDI action plan was truly done together. The Human Rights Learning Forum was a great opportunity to bring more than 200 people together to learn about recent reports and recommendations and really begin to build an action plan. They helped us set priorities for year one, as we'll go through that shortly. There was an online questionnaire that we conducted for members who couldn't attend the Human Rights Learning Forum and wanted to provide input. We met with our members and held a similar session to the Human Rights Learning Forum to garner their input. These were managers and senior staff. We sought out additional subject matter experts' advice and asked them to review the plan. For example, the Ontario Human Rights Commission, who we've worked with over the years. And we're extremely grateful to the Community Equity Council who held those number of workshops and meetings to contribute to the plan. We also plan to work closely with the CEC to develop jointly an accountability framework between the board, CEC, and OPS to help monitor and implement the plan. Here are the three main expected outcomes. They may look familiar. The chief has said that on several occasions in very different venues. We're fully committed to doing all we can, including working with our members, the OPS board, the police associations, the Ontario Human Rights Commission, the Community Equity Council, as well as affected communities in the larger community to make meaningful and measurable progress on EDI. These outcomes are an important part of how we will measure the plan and guide our specific action items each year. The chief spoke about the 10 priority action items. They're listed above. Recall, these action items were developed through prioritization exercises with both the community and the police. All 10 have their own target outcomes and will be measured and assessed for impact and progress. As you've heard from Deputy, we have gathered significant feedback through various sessions, audits, focus groups, and forums. It really is time for action, and I believe this plan will take us there. Action really has already started. Last week, you've heard, we announced the reintroduction of the hate crime section. There are several recent enhancements to our outreach recruitment efforts, another important priority action item that was categorized by both the members and the community. We're also going to develop an EDI lens toolkit to improve our decision-making and systems. In terms of training, we're going to develop new training plans for mandatory human rights, anti-racism, Indigenous awareness, and mental health with an intersectional lens. This will help address gaps and build intercultural learning opportunities. And we're not going to do this by ourselves, we're going to do this in collaboration with the community. Enhancements to community policing has already been discussed in terms of the NRT. And of course, we will continue our leadership work to address racial profiling efforts and concerns about over and under policing. In terms of action items for subsequent years, it will be a similar rolling audit, which I believe the board is very familiar with. We're going to measure and assess where we're at with this action plan, consider budget and planning and resources, and involve police and community to prioritize year 2 of the action plans. We're tabling this plan today for approval at your February meeting. We have distribution and engagement plan to ensure that this draft gets out to all our community members for their input. We welcome any feedback, and the email address is attached. Before I turn it back over to the deputy, I'd just again like to thank the CEC for their contribution. Lori Fenton was amazing in helping out and really guiding the ship and keeping us focused. And of course, Director Snoddy for his contribution as well. Thank you. Back to you.
I just wanted to emphasize 2 points that have already been presented, but you know, we certainly understand and respect the role of governance of the board, especially when it comes to one of your strategic priorities of the business plan, which is around EDI. And so this plan directly addresses one of those priorities. However, it is our intention to work very closely with the CEC in terms of monitoring and evaluating the plan at the end of every year. And actually, it's our hope that every time that we present on progress with this plan, that they are partners here with us to present that, not only to speak to some of the successes we hope to achieve, but also to critically examine the areas where we may be falling short and provide some of that candid feedback to the board around how we can improve. So that's certainly the first piece. The second is this really is a multi-year action plan. We're presenting to you action items for 2020, but we're going to, on a continuous basis, establish our priorities for future years. And again, the CEC will be part of that process to help us ensure that we're focusing on the most impactful areas of activity as we move forward. Thanks very much. We're happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Deputy. I recall one of our long-term board members, Carl Nicholson, speaking up many times on this file and saying that that the service had done a great job in identifying the problem, but not a great job in taking action to deal with it. So I really respect your comments about action and the fact that this will be measurable. And I think we're all looking forward to, particularly the community, to seeing the first fruits of this plan. But before we go there, I'll say, are there questions from my fellow board members? Member Nerman?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks DC Jaswal and the entire team. In fact, I feel EDI is the fabric of any success of an institution, especially in the country we are living in. So thank you very much for bringing it forward and bringing an action plan, as Chair has said. I have a few questions if you can enlighten me with that. So as part of the strategic direction for the Ottawa Police Service, we have been committed to making meaningful progress on our EDI strategy. So could the Chief outline how EDI will be incorporated into our accelerated hiring plan? I will request to have your feedback on the following. For example, how diverse is the existing pool of qualified candidates?
Thank you, Member Nerman. I'm going to queue up Mark Patterson again just to walk you through some of those numbers. And again, we're going to be presenting the full recruiting hiring strategy in January. And I will note that one of the top 10 priorities for this year is the full review under the EDI action plan of our recruiting and hiring process. But again, Mark, can you provide further insights into the current diversity in the pool?
Sorry, Member, were you asking about inquiring about how many applicants we have right now in the diversity?
Yes, in the meaningful way, because if we are hiring the 100 officers in the 2020, you must be having some plan. So what are your directions or what are your initiatives for the EDI? So my interest would be knowing that, how many of those PET candidates in the pool, and if not, what initiatives will be taken to make sure that we have the adequate pool of those candidates into this hiring?
Good question. So thank you for clarification. Like I spoke to earlier, we have 363 applicants right now that applied since January. Of those applicants, 75 are women and 111 are racialized, as well as members or candidates identify themselves in the LGBT community, as well as Indigenous people as well. In relation to what the outreach and recruitment team are doing, today was the first time we held an actual information session specifically for the Somali community. We had 10 members of the Somali community come in and speak to our outreach recruitment team about our process. 6 of those, I'm being told, are applying tonight online. 2 of them are females who are interested in policing. We're doing the same thing through the Indigenous community. We're doing outreach recruitment information sessions. We've done one so far in January 2020, where we had over 100 people from the community express interest in becoming police officers. Like I said, our outreach recruitment team is doing an amazing job in relation to going out and touching communities. We're also going to be speaking to the Community Equity Council about a champion program, where we're asking people from those communities to go reach out to their applicant pool to come in and provide us good candidates. So it'll be a win-win for both. And that Community Equity Council, I hope, is going to be in February. We've already touched base with the Hiring and Training Committee, the Community Equity Council Hiring and Training Committee, about our hiring process. And again, what we've done within our hiring process to get more people from the diverse community to apply.
Remember, the proof will be in the pudding, as I said before. So when you come to our recruit graduation classes, you can let your eyes determine whether or not the work that we've done prior to the EDI plan was fruitful, and the work that we do after adds some more fruit on top of that.
Thank you. So as the Chair has said, we will definitely like to be updated on this plan, because this is the core of the one of our plan action and strategy part.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member Meehan?
Thank you, Chair. And I too would like to congratulate you on your collaborative work. And I'm so thrilled to think that we're going to take action, because as Member Neerman says, this goes to the heart of policing in the city. And I think, congratulations, I think it's really exciting. I just really have one question, really, and it's a budgetary question about the creation of this new office. What is it going to cost? And I guess I'll just stop there. First of all, what is it going to cost us?
So just confirming the staff, the operating budget for the staff for the EDI office is in the 2020 budget approved. In addition to that, the logistics of desks and chairs and computers, which is, I believe, factored into the budget, but I'll let the CAO speak to that.
Yeah, all costs for the office and setting up the plan were built into the budget. I can get back to you with the exact amount if you want. I don't have it at my fingertips.
Is it going to be in the, is it going to be like, is it a community office or is it going to be in the police station? I need to be reminded.
I'll let the EDI team answer that question.
It's going to be within the police building. It's not meant to be a sort of a community accessible office. We anticipate, and again, we're going to have to develop that role and responsibilities for the EDI office, but we anticipate it's going to be more of a center of excellence to guide activities across the organization, as well as implement and manage the EDI plan, making sure that we're on track and able to report back to the board on progress.
Okay, I'm really encouraged, but thank you. Okay.
Member Valiquette.
Thank you, Monsieur le Président. Intérimaire. I come back with my question that I asked a little bit earlier. I have two questions, actually. The first one is, I'm very curious about our background investigators, because I understand they're hired on contract. I want to know if you have any that are racialized. I'll start with that one.
Thank you, Chief. We're in the process right now of hiring more background investigators. And that's because we're well aware that the board was hopefully going to approve the accelerated hiring plan tonight. So we are looking for more diversity. We have diversity in the background investigators, and diversity comes in different ways. Do we have a racialized member of the background investigator team? Currently, we do not. But diversity comes in different ways.
Do you have any women?
Yes, we do have women. And we're anticipating with our new background process, hiring process, that we'll get more women and racialized members. And like you said, Madame Valiquette, they are on contract, a year contract. Some of them we've actually not extended for another year, and that's because they weren't committed to doing the work, right? Some of them have to put in the hours. The other aspect is, again, we're looking for more diversity.
Good. And I have one last question.
Member Valiquette, may I just, you've asked the question twice, and then I want to be as fair as possible. There is certainly a large amount of concerns I've heard from the community. I've actually heard a similar set of concerns from our internal members. But I also want to tell you that the vast majority of the folks that have been in the background positions to hire our officers and our civilian members are long-serving, had been long-serving, dedicated members of this organization. Many of them had put their lives on the line over decades. They love this city, and they love this police service. And to the extent of their ability and the ability of the systems they worked in, they did their best to produce what I believe, you believe, is the best police service, one of the best in this country, one of the best in the world. The EDI plan makes a further commitment to review everything around our entire set of processes, specifically in the background area. And we will make the needed changes. We will take action to make the needed changes. But I want to clearly state, we have had a strong group of background officers, investigators, and they have put a strong team on the road to provide a very strong service to the community. Always room for improvement.
Okay, I had one final comment / question. I think one of the things that over the years the board has seen, the service does a really good job of telling us a message from the service's internal perspective. But I think what would be very helpful for the board is to get more of an external perspective on it. So to that end, I'm very happy to see Sahada joining you here today at the desk. And I would hope that going forward, we will get that external feedback, because I think that unless we have that, this all is going to be what we went through before, potentially. So I think the board needs to hear from the external source, is it working or is it not? So I'm really happy to see CEC here at the table, and I want to know that the commitment is they will be here at the table going forward. So you want to make a comment?
It's as if you were at the last CEC meeting. Because we actually did discuss that, and we want an avenue to be able to come to the board directly with EDI to be able to give you feedback how it is going and the progress we are making.
Great. Good. Well, I assume that oh, I'm sorry. We have, yes.
Sorry, I had 2 questions and I only asked one, so this is definitely the last one. Was there any work done with respectful workplace and professional standards to create meaningful consequences for officers who continue to show bias?
Appreciate the question, and you'll note in the top 10 items we want to work on this year, the complaints process is one of them. And I know that's been an ongoing subject of discussion at the command level in terms of how do we look at existing systems, how do we improve those systems, and where are the gaps in those systems. And so I think there's a number of conversations that will, I hope, support an improved systems of internal complaints, or to support members who choose to complain internally.
Member Nerman.
Thank you. So one quick follow-up. Thank you for raising a very nice questions. I just want to know what is the percentage of the females and visible minorities or racialized community which OPS is required to hire in each of the departments, and are those targets being met?
Thanks for that question. So at the end of the gender audit, there were policies put in place around the representation of women in work units. There is no such, and I'll defer to the Deputy Bell around what that data is. He was involved in that project, but there are no such policies around racialized members. That's certainly something that came out of the diversity audit as a recommendation, but there isn't anything in place at this point.
Thank you. I think
Are there any other questions? Yes, Member Meehan.
Just clarify, there is a percentage of, what's the percentage of women that we need to have on the force? Was it 26%? And we don't have a similar requirement for racialized members?
Not yet. The gender audit was quite specific in its scope and focus, and so policies were changed at the end of that to address the representation of women in work units. As I said, the diversity audit has made similar recommendations around racialized members, but we haven't implemented anything in that area. I'll just ask Deputy Chief Bell just to speak to the findings of the gender audit.
So specifically around the gender audit and the numbers, at the time, our census indicated that there was 23% women within our organization on the sworn side. So we drove to have every section have a representation of at least 23% within their areas. Some of it's been very successful to get women into different areas in the organization. Some of it's had its challenges. And I think Uday and his team have actually done a good job in looking at the things that worked well and the things that we need to do better as we implement the same sort of systems for racialized and diverse members within our organization.
Everybody seemed to be surprised that 10 members of our Somali community are applying today. What has changed that these young possible recruits are considering policing, and which is really exciting? But what has changed in the last little while? Because we talked about some of the difficulties of recruiting members from the community. Has something changed besides our police chief?
Well, I'm gonna quickly turn to Mark Patterson again. I remember coming up here for, you might be able to help me, but there was a Jamaica celebration I came up here for. Devon Clunis was the first black chief in Canada. And I remember one of the highlights was being introduced to 2 Somali officers who'd just been recruited to the OPS at a time where the Toronto Police had only recruited 1. There's a long history of the Somali community bringing forward its best and brightest to apply for positions in the Ottawa Police Service. And I would say as much or maybe more so than any other Ontario police agency, we've been able to recruit and successfully hire Somali officers, and they're doing amazing work in this organization, including a Somali officer that worked for me in Toronto and is now part of one of our neighborhood resource officers. But it is clear it's been intermittent and not consistent. There is something going on. The energy existed again before I arrived here, and the pipeline has been developed by this team prior to my arrival. But we have, since the start of the year, changed our recruiting processes. You'll get a full debrief or briefing on that in February. We have made it easier, less costly, and more rewarding for all members of the Ottawa community and beyond to seek a career here with the Ottawa Police Service. Our pipeline is growing significantly, not just in quantity, but in quality, and ultimately will grow in diversity and give us more options to bring forward to hire into the organization. With that said, Mark Patterson always has more information than I do.
Thank you, Chief. Just to echo what the Chief is saying, and you'll get the full presentation in February. But because of our process and how we have, in reviewing the process and taken out any barriers, you're seeing more people that are interested in applying to us, because if you apply to us, the application process, you go through the prep test, which is our physical readiness police test for the prep test. I can't remember what the acronym stands for. Police readiness something test for police. And you pay for that. It goes through Police Fit, the organization, and you get hired by us. We're going to reimburse you the money for that. So basically, for an applicant to apply, to go through the application process, it could be a zero-sum cost for them if they get hired by us. That's the appealing process of it. But as the Chief alluded to, we're leading the way in relation to this. We're probably one of the most innovative, progressive police services across Ontario, thanks to the Chief and the rest of the executive command team. We put that out, as you can see, through Maria Keane and the rest of the social media streams through our outreach recruitment team. We are having an interest from applicants all over Canada in relation to wanting to come to this service. So it's kind of two-part. One, the process is extremely appealing, making it less barriers for people to get hired, as well as the aspect that we're leading the way and people want to become officers within the Ottawa Police Service.
Great. Just great. Seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Norman.
Thank you, Chief. Now, since we are aware there is no mandatory minimum or a policy in place in the OPS for having the visible or minorities or the racialized community in your departments, will you be working in that direction internally, or you need a directions from the board in that respect?
Let me start with the second half. I think it's incumbent on the board to set your expectations around how we advance equity, diversity, inclusion within the police service. You've done so in the current strategic priorities, and we're about to enter a new phase, and I hope that that will continue to be an area that you focus on. It's a mandated responsibility that I have and that the service has, and so if you provide additional leadership, perspective, and direction, we will take that on with the full spirit. You have your ability through our employment status, me as the Chief of Police, the 2 deputy chiefs, and the CAO, to hold us up to a performance standard that you think is reasonable, given our roles, our responsibilities, and our remuneration. But I will say, quite apart from whatever you happen to choose to do and what direction you set, this is something that has been seized within this organization. Again, before I arrived, it is substantively one of the top 3 conversations that I've had every single day since I've been here, and I've had that with the team around this table and with frontline members, civilian and sworn. The organization recognizes that as good as we are and as progressive as we are, we need to be better. That members are, for a variety of reasons, struggling within the organization. I know we talk a lot about diversity, but it should not be lost on anyone in this room that a substantive portion of the EDI action plan speaks to member wellness, mental health, workplace bullying, workplace violence, beyond skin color, gender, sexual orientation. Our members want to feel that they can bring their full selves every day, in every way to this organization and serve this community to their fullest individual abilities. And they all told me that we need to get along better than we've ever been before in order to work better together to better serve the community. So this is well beyond how many women and visible minorities and Indigenous and LGBTQ members we can recruit and hire and place across this organization. Do we have a welcoming, safe, healthy organization? Do we respect each other in every way? And doing that, can we show respect in new and important ways to the community? I don't want to undermine the conversations we've had around the diversity piece of it, but ultimately the inclusion piece of it is where the real measure of success will come from. So I, again, state, this is an amazing organization that has already established itself. This will take us to the next level. It's built on a strong foundation by leaders that predate me, and I recognize, I'm not sure if Larry Hill is still in the room here. There's Larry there. But these are the efforts of command officers and executive members and senior officers and frontline officers and civilian members who predate me by generations. We're picking up from where they left off. This plan that's been presented to you will get us to the next level and the next level beyond.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from the board? You've done a great job. Your team has done an amazing job. This is really important. It's a huge step, and we're really looking forward to where we go to from here. So on the Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Action Plan, that the Ottawa Police Services Board receive and table the Ottawa Police Service Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Action Plan to be considered at the board meeting on the 24th of February 2020. Received and tabled. Thank you. So, thank you. We have a consideration to move in camera that the Ottawa Police Services Board adjourn the public portion of its meeting to move in camera to discuss confidential items pertaining to legal and personnel matters in accordance with Section 35(4)B of the Police Services Act. Carried.